Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Mikey. You guys are rocking with me on Mike's Intellectual Corner. On today's history reaction, we're going to be reacting to the History of Russia Part 1 by Epic History TV. Pretty much without further ado, we're just going to get right into it.
For thousands of years, the lands known today as Russia and Ukraine were inhabited by nomadic tribes and mysterious Bronze Age cultures. The only record they left were their graves. In the great open grasslands of the south, the steppe, they buried their chieftains beneath huge mounds called kurgans. The ancient Greek
So I wonder if they were of Turkic or maybe Slavic background, maybe. I hate how so much history has got lost, though, you know.
Ancient Greek historian Herodotus called these people Scythians. Their lands were overrun by the same nomadic warriors who brought down the Roman Empire. The land was then settled by Slavs. They shared some language and culture, but were divided into many different tribes. Vikings from Scandinavia, known in the east as Varangians, rode up Russia's long rivers on daring raids and trading expeditions. According to legend, the East Slavs asked a Varangian chief named Rurik to be their prince and unite the tribes. He accepted and made his capital at
Now, I do remember him after I was doing a project here on, I was trying to make a project here on YouTube, but I do remember him from that. And I do remember he was the first ruler, and then he was followed, I think, by Oleg the Seer, if I'm not mistaken. Let me know if I'm wrong or not, though, guys. Because that's just off my memory, if I'm not.
He accepted and made his capital at Novgorod. His dynasty, the Rurikids, would rule Russia for 700 years. His people called themselves the Rus and gave their name to the land. Rurik's successor, Oleg, captured Kiev, making it the capital of a new state, Kievan Rus. A century later, seeking closer ties with the Byzantine Empire to the south, Vladimir the Great adopted their religion and converted to Orthodox Christianity. He is still venerated today as the man who brought Christianity to Ukraine and Russia. Yaroslav the Wise codified laws and conquered new lands.
Didn't they also, I think eventually, right before the Byzantines, were taken over, didn't they also marry off a Byzantine princess to the a Russian people? But yeah.
New lands. His reign marked the golden age of Kievan Rus. It was amongst the most sophisticated and powerful states in Europe. But after Yaroslav's death, his sons fought amongst themselves. Kievan Rus disintegrated into a patchwork of feuding princedoms, just as a deadly new threat emerged from the east.
There's always a reason why great kingdoms always get conquered or always, break up, and that's usually why. It's because of the death of a king and then internal strife from there. That's usually what I've seen is a really good starting match or something for these different civil wars and stuff. But yeah.
Emerged from the east. The Mongols under Genghis Khan had overrun much of Asia. Now they launched a great raid across the Caucasus Mountains and defeated the Kievan princes at the Battle of the Kalka River, but then withdrew.
I know those flat grasslands didn't help at all either, because I know the cavalry were able to ride right through those. But as we also have always seen in our Mongol videos, they're also they're able to get through those mountains as well pretty easily too, which is crazy.
14 years later, the Mongols returned. A gigantic army led by Batu Khan overran the land. Cities that resisted were burned, their people slaughtered. The city of Novgorod was spared because it submitted to the Mongols. Its prince, Alexander Nevsky, then saved the city again, defeating the Teutonic Knights at the Battle of the Ice, fought above a frozen lake. He remains one of Russia's most revered heroes.
I see why too, because the Teutonic Knights are like very revered, if I'm not mistaken, because they're what the foundations are to become the Prussian state, if I'm not mistaken, the Prussians, if I'm not mistaken, but yeah.
Is one of Russia's most revered heroes. The Mongols ruled the land as conquerors. Their new empire was called the Golden Horde, ruled by a Khan from his new capital at Sarai. The Rus princes were his vassals. They were forced to pay tribute or suffer devastating reprisal raids. They called their oppressors Tatars. They lived under the Tatar Yoke. Alexander Nevsky's son, Daniel, founded the Grand Principality of Moscow, which quickly grew in power.
Now, was it called Moscow or Muscovy? If anybody knows, let me know. At the beginning, anyway. If I'm wrong, let me know, though, guys.
Did the Grand Principality of Moscow, which quickly grew in power. Under the great Uzbek Khan, the Tatars converted to Islam. A rising power, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania defeated the Tatars at the Battle of Blue Waters and conquered Kiev. 18 years later, Dmitry Donskoy, Grand Prince of Moscow, also defeated the Tatars at the Great Battle of Kulikova Field. After years of infighting, the Golden Horde now began to disintegrate into rival khanates.
Yeah, so this is when Moscow is going to start to, go out east essentially and start conquering, I guess, the Golden Horde's old lands and stuff like that, looks like.
Rival khanates. Constantinople, capital and last outpost of the once great Byzantine Empire, fell to the Turkish Ottoman Empire. Some hailed Moscow as the Third Rome, the seat of Orthodox Christian faith. Now Rome and Constantinople had fallen. Meanwhile, the Grand...
Yeah, that's who it was. They married off a princess to Moscow, whoever the ruler was at the time there, if I'm not mistaken anyway.
Now the Grand Princes of Moscow continued to expand their power, annexing Novgorod and forging the first Russian state. At the Ugra River, Ivan III of Moscow faced down the Tatar army and forced it to retreat. Russia had finally cast off the Tatar yoke. Under Grand Prince Vasily III, Moscow continued to grow in size and power. His son, Ivan IV, was crowned the first Tsar of Russia. He would be remembered as Ivan the Terrible. Ivan conquered Tatar lands in Kazan and Astrakhan, but was
And see, I never understood why he was called Ivan the Terrible, I guess. I don't know why, but I'm sure, hopefully he talks about it, though. Let me shut up, hopefully.
But was defeated in the Livonian War by Sweden and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Ivan's modernizing reforms gave way to a reign of terror and mass executions, fueled by his violent paranoia. Russia was still vulnerable. Raiders from the Crimean Khanate were able to burn Moscow itself. But the next year...
One thing, too, is crazy that I didn't even notice that this is all taking place in, like, the new world is getting discovered and all that stuff, which is kind of crazy to think about. Because, I guess you never really see these type of different parts of the world whenever we're talking about the new world and all that stuff, but it is kind of crazy.
The Khanate were able to burn Moscow itself. But the next year, Russian forces routed the Tatars at Molody, just south of the city. Cossacks now lived on the open steppe, a lawless region between three warring states. They were skilled horsemen who lived freely and were often recruited by Russia and Poland to fight as mercenaries. Ivan the Terrible's own son, the Tsarevich, fell victim to one of his father's violent rages, bludgeoned to death with the royal scepter. The Cossack adventurer Yermak Timofeyevich.
Oh, wow, that sounds like a soap opera or like a Game of Thrones or something like. Yeah, I can see why they called him terrible now.
Adventurer Yermak Timofeyevich led the Russian conquest of Siberia, defeating Tatars and subjugating indigenous tribes. In the north, Arkhangelsk was founded, for the time being Russia's only seaport linking it to Western Europe, though it was icebound in winter. Ivan the Terrible was succeeded by his son, Fyodor I, who died childless. It was the end of the Rurik dynasty. Ivan's advisor, Boris Godunov, became Tsar. But after his sudden death, his widow...
Like we said before, the death of a king always brings on strife and everything, and now we have the death of the entire, dynasty, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's about to get ugly.
But after his sudden death, his widow and teenage son were brutally murdered, and the throne seized by an impostor claiming to be Ivan the Terrible's son. He too was soon murdered. Russia slid into anarchy, the so-called Time of Troubles. Rebels and foreign armies laid waste to the land, and the population was decimated by famine and plague. Polish troops occupied Moscow. Swedish troops seized Novgorod. The Russian state seemed on the verge of extinction.
Alright guys, we'll go ahead and end it there. So yeah, we see that this is the Time of Troubles, and it's kind of crazy too because he covered a lot of time within this very first part, so obviously there's a lot of history that's about to come our way. With that being said though guys, I do thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Michael's Intellectual Corner. I'll see you guys on another episode. Thank you guys, I'm out. Peace!